Hello and welcome to the BurnCast. I'm Brady Byrne.
And I'm Kim Cass.
Today we're looking at a book called SWORD IMMORTAL ONLINE by author Ink White. As always, any criticisms directed towards the authors and works that we discuss are exaggerated for entertainment purposes and are not meant to be taken personally. Thank you for listening, and we hope you enjoy the show.
Let's talk about SWORD IMMORTAL Online.
So yes, let's talk about SWORD IMMORTAL Online. Now, this was a book I found a few weeks ago, and I saw new releases, and I believe it came in at around $7 US, and thought, wow. I mean, the cover art is fantastic. It looks professionally done, and I thought, $7 for a new release that no one's heard of, why not?
Yeah, and I mean, that's a high price for the kind of stuff we usually talk about.
True.
So when you said to me, hey, I got this book, it ran me about $7, I was like, okay, well, usually we read the bargain bin stuff, but maybe you found something of actual quality for us to talk about.
Well, that's 7 times the price of a bucket full of bullets, for example,
So you told me you found this book.
Yes.
And you told me not to read it. You told me not to even look up what it was.
Yes, well, I have concerns for your well-being, and I think often we'll suggest these books for people to read because they're quite entertaining. SWORD IMMORTAL Online is the opposite of that. It is a torture. and it's funny because there was perhaps a story written by Ink White that was good, and because it is a translated work, whoever did the translation, this Zenith novels, but I've since seen other work done by Zenith novels, and the translations on those aren't so bad. So someone within their organization has screwed Ink White over.
Yeah, so this appears to be some sort of Chinese release.
Yes.
You mentioned that this book is no longer available on Amazon. It was actually taken down since you acquired it.
Yeah.
We're looking at it on the Zenith Novels webpage.
Yes.
Which the Chinese title and author's name written in Chinese are listed first. So this is a translated text, and it also says translation status ongoing. So it might not even be finished in that department.
Well, it says that on there, but when I looked on the Amazon page, it was for sale, completely finished. It said completely translated by Zenith Novels, and they were proud to release it.
And they charged $7 for it.
Yeah, say what you like. If you're charging $7, that book better be finished. And the fact, I think, that Amazon has taken it down when other novels that we've looked at are still up and are riddled with errors, puts you in a position where you're like, wow, this must really be something quite special. Now, at the end of this book, it has a little bit of about the publisher, and it says, we at Zenith Novels are a team devoted to translating Chinese novels. We are trying to bring you the most interesting novels from China. Our translators work hard. However, this work of translation, it's inevitable that they may translate some words that don't make sense. To help us, you can join us here and tell us which sentences make you feel confused. Thank you very much for reading and help. Sorry, mate. If I wanted to tell you each sentence that was wrong, it would be every single one. Because it really is that bad. And
well, you're paying $7 essentially to crowdsource their work for them.
Yeah. Again, just appalling. I think someone is to blame for this atrocity. It really is. There's someone in Zenith Publishing that didn't do their money's worth, and no one bothered to read, and they just pushed it out and said it's finished. Hopefully,
Well, we've said things before like, oh, didn't the author read their own stuff? I mean, there's errors in the first chapter, there's errors in the first sentence. Didn't they even take the time to read it? And I would think, I didn't read this book, but I would think that can't be the case this time because it's a translation. They have to read every sentence, at least.
Yeah.
Maybe the translation is lazy, but they have to at least read it.
Yeah. I mean, if you understand English well enough to translate an entire book and get paid for that service, then what you've done with this is either deceitful or you're really, really, really misleading yourself with how you think English is written, because this isn't how it's done. And I really don't want to attack Mr. Ink White for this, because his book was probably good.
Yeah, he's probably not attached to the translation at all.
No. So, I want to make sure that the story of SWORD IMMORTAL Online should be recognized as a possibly fine tale.
Possibly a masterwork. We don't know. I mean, like you said, the production looks really good. It has, a nice, interesting cover art. The font is cool. It looks like a cool book. I don't know.
Yeah, I would assume that the Chinese version of this has a real story, or at least something,
Mm-hmm.
But the story itself, from what I could gather, I don't know really how to tell you. The book is about a video game that a guy plays, but there is some sort of connection to spaceships that operate like in real life. So there are these spaceships,
Mm-hmm.
and they do things out in space, and this guy plays a game. I don't know how it all ties together because I would rather gouge out my eyes than read the book fully. Reading just what I did was a painful experience, and I really wouldn't want to put it on anyone. And that's why I told you not to read it, because...
Well, I mean, that speaks a lot too. I mean, you paid a hefty price for this book.
Yeah.
The sunk cost didn't even get to you at this point. If I pay $7 for a shitty book, I'm still probably going to finish it, just on the fact that I'm curious to see how this plays out. But if it's really that bad, then I don't know what to tell you. You insisted I do not read it.
Well, part of me wanted to read some of it to you, because I wanted a genuine reaction.
Okay.
So hopefully I can bring something to the audience and bring something to you in particular that will make you fall in love with your hatred towards it.
with Sword Immortal Online.
There are also lots of lovely little bits that I think we normally wouldn't talk about that I want to. For example, the title is bad. I mean, the title Sword Immortal Online. What is that?
Well, as I was saying before we recorded, when you told me about it at first, it sounds like Sword Art Online.
Yeah.
Which is also a game about being inside a video game, if I'm not mistaken.
But this has nothing to do with that. It's completely its own story. And you can give them shit for stealing ideas or whatever, but as soon as you hear some of this book, you will cease to believe that there are any ideas put in. This almost feels like it was written by like an AI, like it was like a generated...
Like an experiment.
Yeah, like an experiment gone wrong, except for the fact that things still happen, but none of it seems to be too well connected, and like even an AI wouldn't write something that bad. I just feel like it would have a better idea of what it's, what's going on.
So it's a mess, but it's organized enough to where you're convinced a human did pen this.
Yeah, it definitely is written, and I think, when it comes to Chinese translation, things are written the opposite way around, and I really don't know anything about Chinese language, but it must be very difficult to translate.
Oh, sure, yeah. There's also, colloquialisms and things that are culturally relevant in China that aren't here.
Yeah.
You're going to find a lot of difficulty suggesting the same intent character-wise.
Yeah, the thing is with this is that there must be an audience for it for them to warrant translating it, right?
And to charge so much for it.
Yeah.
I'm still a bit hung up on this.
So they must think that there's an audience in English that wants to read this. But I would assume that most of the people that want to read something like this are probably not English speakers themselves.
Yeah.
So it might be like a Japanese or Korean person who doesn't know Chinese but still wants to read this story because of whatever else. So they read it in English, but I would assume that their English isn't as good as mine, for example, and for them to be able to understand this work, you would need, a super level of English that I don't possess, obviously, because I can't understand it. So what hope is there for these people?
Well, I'd be curious, before the text was taken off Amazon, to see if you got a look at any of the reviews and could gauge by their level of English whether or not you're right in this assumption that the audience is kind of also a non-native English-speaking audience.
Well, on some of the other books, there were people talking, and one comment sprung up to me, and it was, it must have been there was no information about the person that wrote it. They had a fictional name, so it was tricky, but they did say, with translated works like these, they're always hit and miss. Some work and some don't. But this was about another book, and I took a look into that book, and it made sense as far as English is concerned. I just read the first few pages, and to make sure that it wasn't Zenith novels as a whole, because then I can just write them off and just say this is a bogus whatever. But
yeah,
I think you're a production company that specializes in Chinese translations, and this is what you're doing? And you charge me money? You want my money for this work?
You charge a lot of money, yeah.
Also, this book is really long. This is like over 300 pages on Kindle, so it's a big, big, big book. And for someone to take all that time to do it as well, I think is amazing. It's like an incredible workload for someone to take on. And for them to go so far and do so much work to such a poor or such a confused level is also like, it vexes me. You know, I'm vexed by this like weird anomaly in the writing world. So again, the name is crazy. On the little rights reserved page also says, this book is a work of fiction. Names, characters, places, and incidents are the product of the author's imagination and are used fictitiously. Any resemblance to actual events, locales, or persons, living or dead, is coincidental. No one thinks. No. I like it has so much more flavor for me because once you start to read it, and then comes the table of contents. I just had to read you the chapters because just hearing the chapter names will make you go, what? It starts off chapter 1, Wedge. Chapter 2, Meeting Apocalypse. Chapter 3, Rosie the Beauty. Chapter 4, Into the Game. Chapter 5, Leveling Up Fast. Chapter 6, Deep into Wolf Valley. Chapter 7, Fang of Wolf King. Chapter 8, 5 Elements Quenching. Chapter 9, A Secret. And then there's 50 chapters, so.
Goodness.
And they're all equally. Chapter 44, The Showtime of Sinking Suit. I just love the name of chapter 48. Play lute in Zenhua and master daggers in Apocalypse. That's the name of the chapter. Chapter 34, Banquet with the Lady. Chapter 35, A Leap Year Proposal. I mean, they're all just
random strings of words, yeah.
Yeah.
But at the same time, I imagine they mean something in Chinese.
Well,
perhaps.
Maybe, but what's the point of translating something if it doesn't mean anything? And, like, you would hope that to some extent they would be like, well, we can translate this to something that's not going to mean exactly that, but if we translate it more directly, it's not going to make any sense at all, so why bother doing that, you know?
Yeah.
Why translate it exactly if exactly means nonsense, you know?
Like, this content is so enmeshed in the culture it originates from that there's no point to bring it to the West because it just makes no sense to us.
Well, you talk about culture and things like that, but I don't see any culture in this. This is beyond classification like that. There's no, Chinese culture is different from ours, but this is something else. Like, this is a problem of a much larger scale. And I don't think there is any other way to fully express this than to simply read the chapter aloud. And I'll start with chapter 1. I'll read some of it aloud and you...
strap myself in.
Yeah, you just have to sit back and... I will also say, you're not the first person I read this to. I read this to, for example, my parents, and I gauged their reaction to it as shocked and appalled.
All right.
And remember, this book is long. Lord of the Rings, long.
All right, well, subject me to some, what the fuck is it? SWORD Immortal Online.
I'll also read you something, and you can tell me what happened, all right? Because I think that might be quite a challenge in its own right.
Sure, yeah.
Chapter 1, Wedge. Humans have never stopped the footsteps of exploring the universe. Who preached at the beginning of the ages? Everything wasn't shaped, and how to research. How to explore all over the world. How to last forever. Before 1977... the American Explorer 2 left the Earth heading toward the solar system boundary to search for traces of extraterrestrial life. In 2010, it suddenly interrupted communication with the Earth, and its last image was technically restored, and they found the Explorer 2 was crossing a huge spherical enchantment. NASA experts believe that this was a wormhole hidden in the solar system, leading to another universe. The United States and the rest of the technological powers of the world have exhausted resources to create the apocalypse, which eventually took a total of a decade to reach the edge of the wormhole. However, the 5 crew members passing the wormhole on the same day arrived at the other side of the wormhole, but found that it was deserted and dead world. The vast debris of unidentified creatures scattered everywhere in the sky, and the dilapidated, magnificent buildings floated in the void, dense and boundless. Larger than the spaceship, the battle axe was even higher than the mountain, but the armor and the weapon were broken, and the gods and the animals were not living, but only eternal and desolate and loneliness.
Okay.
I mean, that is the first. That's not even the whole chapter, but it pretty much carries on in a sort of, I don't know how to describe it other than like a twisted poem of strange, it's like written by something that's not human. Like,
yeah, well, I mean, I don't know. It sounds pretty clear cut to me. It sounds like humanity harnessed nuclear technology to discover some sort of wormhole in space. And from the other side of that wormhole brought some weird dimensional shifts that we don't understand. That's all the sense I could really make of it.
yes.
I am right on the line of this is a bunch of jumbled up bullshit of language and like a brilliant abstract poem of creation.
Yeah, it's like right on the line. It's right on the line of like,
Yeah.
he hits you with this like passionate descriptions of things, but they don't really make any sense.
There's a hint of something deep there, but it's delivered in word salad.
Yeah, exactly. And I often think, I don't often think about this a lot, but the Chinese language is written in these greater symbols, and the symbols would mean more than one word to us.
Yeah.
So I think that if you translated one of those symbols, you could get many different translations of that, and that's why it seems so strange. But
you're trying to parcel out like why a battle axe
is in the sky now, and but it was higher than the mountain? What mountain? Where did the mountain come from? But that's chapter 1, pretty much describing these two spaceships, the Apocalypse and the Earth Explorer 1 and 2.
Okay.
And they explore this wormhole. Now, this happens in real life.
Okay, so this isn't part of the virtual...
So this has nothing to do with the game. It's not to do with the game. And then chapter 2, Meeting Apocalypse, takes you to Linhan City, a small town of northern China, July 2030, right? So it's in the future.
Yeah. The distant future of 2030.
Yes. It starts with this character, Li Chen, who is our main protagonist.
All right, we got another Chen.
Yes, I know. If you're looking for similarities, then...
If you're looking for more of China Strike, we've got them.
Yeah. Now, Li Chen starts off and he meets this girl, and there's a whole bunch of very, 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 very strange things happening that I don't even know how to describe, but basically in the first chapter he sees also this game that his friend shows him, and it's some sort of like online, like an MMO.
Yeah.
And but where I wanted to get to basically, and I don't think I can read much more of this because saying it aloud makes me feel like you remember there's like a type of torture, declaiming poetry, where you have someone in shackles and then you go and read very bad poetry. It's like a real form of punishment that you can do to people, but it's also brought up in books like The Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy. They also declaim poetry. They torture Arthur Dent with terrible poetry. And this feels like it was written for that purpose. To make people go, oh my god, please stop. Please stop talking.
Well, you've read me some, I'm going to call it narration.
Yes, that was all narration. There's no people in that entire chapter. It's just background info.
What is the dialogue like in this story?
Would you like me to read you some?
Yeah, I think I would, yeah.
Now, I'm going to skip chapter 2 because it's just an introduction to this character who wakes up and hurts his head and looks at this game. But it's just, nothing more than that happens, and it's very long. I read that chapter in a sort of attempt to believe that there was something going to happen in the story. But by chapter 3 is definitely more interesting, but I also gave up at chapter 3 because
That's where you stop.
Yeah. Oh, no, I didn't stop, but I stopped reading the entirety of every chapter. So
I see.
I only read those 3 chapters fully. The rest I sort of skimmed and read parts of and tried to get the story as much as I could, but there's really not much more to it than that. The ending is just atrocious. He just plays the game, and he doesn't even... the highest level is 40 or whatever, and he reaches like level 35. So it's not like he maxes out. And what's so interesting about someone playing a game, it doesn't, he doesn't save the world to any degree. He just gets good at the game.
He doesn't resolve some great character issue.
No. Like some of the background of the apocalypse and the wormhole, like the game has some sort of outside influence, almost like Ender's Game,
Yeah, well, when you were talking about them playing something in the game and influencing the world, I was thinking of Ender's Game.
Yeah, but where Ender's Game is a real book with a real story with actual things happening, this is more of a nonsense. But I don't know. You can't call it a story because it's not a story, because, yeah. So, Chapter 3, Rosie the Beauty.
All right. Tell me about Rosie.
Yeah, yes. The man in black, lying on the floor, grunted. Her voice was delicate and charming, almost making Li Chen lose his attention. That's all one sentence, by the way.
Okay.
The owner of the voice seemed to realize that the situation was wrong. The eyes above the mask were focused. Her hands slapped on the ground and rushed to Li Chen with the reaction force. At this time, the pace of the black man was unpredictable, and the figure flashed into the front of Li Chen. The body suddenly leaped, and the right palm attacked him like the wind. When you walk, this is the dialogue now, when you walk, your palms change. You walk like a dragon. The insider ate trigrams. Who the hell are you? Li Chen suddenly dodged her palm and yelled. Some of it is written. He heard of the black man's attacking set when practicing kung fu with his grandfather. At that time, Grandpa was amazed at this set. The man in black did not stop at all, but snorted and rushed to attack him with both palms. I love that image of my head. Attacking someone with both of your palms. Are you crazy? If you don't teach you a lesson, you don't know how great I am. At this moment, Li Chen could no longer dodge, but he rushed toward her, catching the palms of the man in black from the bottom up, and at the same time, he dodged to the back of her. The energy was constantly raging in his body. When he touched the body, the waist was bent, and the airflow was activated at the moment. Kronk. That's dialogue. Kronk. He blew off the woman in black again. Dialogue again. I have to make a difference when I say it, because
Yeah.
if I don't, you won't understand. Lady, who sent you here? Is there any misunderstanding? Li Chen pulled the back of the living room and stared at the man in black leaning against the wall of the corridor. Grandpa said that there are not many people who have mastered the 8 trigrams in the world, and they all have friendship with him. Dialogue. Li Tai Chi, there is a sword hidden in the boxing. When did my father find you such a great master?
Okay, I'm confused. So, I mean, this sounds like there's some sort of altercation between Li Chen.
They're practicing kung fu.
Li Chen and some sort of...
black man.
Black man or man in black.
Yeah.
The distinction should be more significant, but it doesn't sound like it is.
No.
Here. But it also seems to refer to a woman in black, or it refers to the man in black with the pronoun her.
Yeah, and then there's also grandpa.
Now, what is going on there? I mean...
see, Brady, I think the thing is, when you're practicing kung fu, things are happening so fast that you don't really know who you're fighting,
Oh, so it's really more the author's way of accurately immersing you in the feeling of being in a kung fu fight by confusing you with the language.
Yeah.
Well, then the book's brilliant.
So anyway, Li Chen meets this girl a little bit further down in a manner that I can only describe as the girl coming down in an energy ball and blowing up his room. Again, this is not in the game yet. We're not in the game. There's a chapter called The Game Begins, and that's when they start playing the game. But this all happens, so this energy ball comes down, explodes his room, and there's obviously some sort of girl inside.
Mm-hmm.
And they start talking. And I will just cut in to a point where, like, it's beyond all the... Because when he starts describing things, it just... You can get lost in this, like, ethereal world of description. So it's... Just kind of want to get to the dialogue with maybe at least there's something, to hold on to.
Mm-hmm.
Slap. That's dialogue. The woman in black angrily slapped Li Chen's face again and turned to walk into the bedroom. Hey, I said, how can a girl be so strong? ? You keep hurting people with your energy, Li Chen yelled, covering his face. If If you're not sent by my father, then you should be one of the tenants of this house. The woman in black, as always, gave an irrelevant answer. And this is one of my favorite parts because why is that an irrelevant answer? I mean, like, even if this is translated, so what? So you're the tenant of this house? The woman in black took a bottle of water from the house and looked at the coffee table differently. Oh, you were not too stupid. After that, she drank it all.
This is really just nonsense words.
Yeah, it really is just an utter, complete ramble for 300 pages.
I'm really trying to imagine this scene, and I'm really struggling.
Well, yeah, it doesn't get much better, and reading more doesn't increase your knowledge of what's going on. If anything, it makes things more confusing.
Yeah, well, as soon as I think I have an idea of what's happening, there's a whole nother layer added on that just confuses me.
Now that you know a little bit of how the book reads, we can move on to some of the things I noticed when going through the book in more totality. The number of times the word cronk is written in dialogue is obscene.
We got to do some research to find out if cronk means something in Chinese, I guess.
Some sort of, yeah. But it's just like cronk as an onomatopoeia, like a crunk. I just don't. That's not a word in English, so I don't know why he's written it. Another thing I noticed is that there is Chinese in this book.
Mm-hmm. Now, is that because the story takes place somewhat surrounding China and the text appears in Chinese, or is it because the translator could not figure out what that said, so they just left it in Chinese?
Well, I don't know, because I would assume that you translate a book, sentence by sentence. You go sort of down in a format like that. But as I started to go through this, I realized that there were just parts, like just the odd sentence, just in Chinese. And I didn't understand. And I was like, oh, have they just left this untranslated? Or or has this been translated in the next line, but they just left it there? Or, I mean, there's no reason for it to be there. But they seem to be sometimes the same length as like I can look at one that says cronk, just the dialogue cronk, and the right above it is also another one symbol Chinese piece of dialogue, which also has an exclamation point, but it's just one of these symbols.
Maybe this is what it means by translation
in progress?
Yeah, I really think they didn't finish.
But it's translated.
Yeah, why, if it was still ongoing, would there actually be an attempt to translate it, but still leave in the untranslated version?
Yeah, and I mean, have they just not gone through and read it? I mean, there are very basic, structures of this business that I would assume that they would do.
To be honest, and I don't know that much about translation, or specifically translation from Chinese to English, I would not put it past whoever to take the text from this book and run it through a text translation software and just put whatever came out.
Yeah.
Text translation software works really well for like a sentence, a couple words, but when you try to string together a bunch of ideas, it can't figure it out. It's going to come out a mess, and that's what this sounds like.
But, that's why, I could do that. I could put a book through Google Translate and get some sort of gobbledygook nonsense story.
But maybe that's what happened. It does say, join our team as an editor or translator on the Zenith Novels webpage. And they ask at the end of SWORD IMMORTAL Online, you said, like, hey, let us know if these sentences aren't correct. Maybe they do really crowdsource a lot of their translation, and some of the people just ran it through a text translation software and dropped it in and no one noticed.
I would like to believe that a company with their own website with many published or translated works has a little bit more, I don't know what to call it, effort. I'm sure it is extremely difficult to translate a book,
Especially this one. But it is atrocious to me that you would do it to that level where you're just like, oh, Google will do it for me, $7, please. Yeah.
$7 for and that to me is the part where I don't have much empathy for the work, because I purchased this as a book. This was in the new releases of Amazon. I went down not knowing anything about it, and I bought it because, hey, Sword Immortal Online. Maybe it's like Ender's Game or something. I don't know. Who knows?
Yeah.
And then you buy it, and then you see that, well, what you've basically got is Google Translate best ever book written. Now, another thing I noticed is that the parts where they're playing the game, they fight things, as you would expect.
Naturally.
And one of the things I noticed and I loved, and has nothing to do with translation, is every time they go to fight something, you get a combination of action moves, like, oh, he picked up his sword and he ran, through the forest, or whatever.
Mm-hmm.
And then you get this list of numbers.
Like a stat sheet.
No, like the attack damage,
Yeah, like the stats of the item he just picked up.
Yeah, but it's literally the fight scene is done in a set of numbers of the amount of damage is being done to the person. So it says minus 135, plus 102, plus 45. And then, you get these sections, and they're everywhere. And then it has another paragraph, and then it has a nice long list of numbers again, and then... what a way to write a story.
You know what that reminds me of? This sounds like a book that was written by, the engine that runs in the background of Dwarf Fortress, the really complicated simulator game.
Yeah, or something like RimWorld.
Yeah, it just generates stories and backgrounds and all this stuff for people, millions and millions of characters, and it tries its best to make them unique, but it does end up sounding a bit programmed.
Yeah.
And the combat is just like that. He sticks his right index finger into the left eye of the rabbit, and it really goes beat by beat, just like how you described.
Yeah.
Number by number.
It's just very funny to look down and just see how much there is, though. And you do get stat rundowns of some of the things they're fighting, which might not be so bad in the context of, obviously, if you're writing a story that takes place in a game.
That sounds kind of like an interesting idea.
Yeah.
In practice.
That might be pertinent information for you to know the, thing. And it has quite a funny... I do want to read you one thing. This is in chapter 18. So about, a quarter of the way through the book. You get this hilarious little passage, which I had to make a note on, where you get the leaderboards for his city that he's in. And you get some of the usernames for the people. So he opens up the leaderboard, and then it says, number 1, the top person in the city.
Mm-hmm.
It's called Not a Fish, level 20, Mage. Then number 2 is Looking for Dreams in Snow, level 19. And then the third guy is called The Battle of the Promise. And then number 4, First Sunny Day. Number 5, The Glimpse. Number 6, Floating in the Morning. 7, nice one. 8, Night Brilliance. 9, Dream Morning. And 10, Dominating Wolf. Now, I don't know how many games this person has played, but...
Those are not usernames.
Those are not usernames. I really I don't know what else to say. Even if you tried to ignore all the nightmarish issues.
Well, let's clarify. Those are not usernames you would see in a Western MMO.
No.
That's not typically how we structure our usernames. It might be in China, where, again, the symbols are suggesting of much broader ideas than, like in English, every single word is its own thing.
True.
In China, the Battle of the Promise might be an appropriate username.
True. Sorry, Brady, all of my knowledge from China is just from the book China Strikes, so...
Well, then I'm sure you're very knowledgeable on that subject.
I was surprised to see no mention of Tong punks in this book.
Yes, and when do we get the stat page of the character's Room Broom?
Yeah. You do get stats of weapons and things like that. You do get stats of monsters and things like that.
Mm.
And I love how it's written because, for example, some of the characters will have a name like Little Girl. So you'll get this line of dialogue that I will quote now. Wow, the monsters at the gate are so strange. Little Girl curiously looked at the sword-shaped monster in front of her and passed the attributes onto the team channel. So the Little Girl is their username. And then the Golden Elves, elite monster, and then it gives you a stat page. Level 22, attack 124 to 207, defense 120, life 1300, skill psychic array. And then it gives you a literal list, like an introduction page to this thing. And it made me go, wait, is this a real game? Like, who would write all these stats for things and write page descriptions of the Golden Elves to write from the opening gate of the you would only do that if you were making a real game, right? And then I tried to find some sort of, but obviously I can't search for it in Chinese, and searching up Sword Immortal Online doesn't give anything except this book. So as far as I could tell, and it's not as if there's a foreword to say, oh, this is fan fiction from this game, or this is the novelization of this.
Well, Kim, you idiot. You already read us the disclaimer that tells us that all things contained within this book.
Oh, yes, are fictional. Yeah.
So, of course, Sword Immortal Online is not a real game.
Yeah. It just surprises me that he's written so much of this. And another thing that I found confusing from another perspective is that he has this...
Oh, did you say there was something confusing about Sword Immortal Online?
Yeah, well, you would think that the way they lay out the stat pages would be the same for all of the things. At least if you're doing it, make them the same every time. But no, actually, sometimes when it gives you a stat page, it gives you... instead of saying attack, 12 to 23 or whatever, it says attack, and then it has 5 stars, and then defense 4 stars, life 3.5 stars. And I said, wait, you can't do that. It has to be uniform, because I don't know what 5 stars means. Does that mean he can, how much attack is that? So there's more in here that I would like to get into if I could read the book and it made sense. There are other issues that
when we're discussing a normal book, we would say
we could say, hey, that's not uniform.
In your writing structure, you should have internal consistency, and we could break down the examples of where that is not achieved here, but it sounds like that isn't possible.
No, that's not possible here at all. It's confusing, and I'm like, hey, that's not a translation issue. There's no translation issue between numbers and stars, so
yeah,
that's on you, friend. And it basically ends, there's not much more to say about this, and I don't want to carry on about this other than asking the question, why, Zenith? Please, Zenith, do something about this. And I guess they've taken it down, and it's the end of this tragic little tale, but...
The thing I was just thinking is, translation is not just turn these words in this language into this one. Sometimes it is about interpreting for an alternative audience the things that don't make sense.
Yeah.
So you would think that, a Westerner who has played a Western MMO would translate ideas like, you said, a stat page having numbers versus stars.
Yeah.
And they would know that one or the other, or at least having some consistency between them, would convince us that this is an actual translated work.
Yeah.
But this sounds like someone who doesn't speak English translated this book in Chinese into English.
Yeah. But it still confuses me. I said in the beginning that I was vexed because there must be an audience for this. There must be people who read this sort of stuff, or who are interested in this narrow niche.
Besides us, of course.
Besides us, but we're reading it for all the wrong reasons.
Yeah, or the best ones.
And, it must be so challenging for them,
Yeah.
It must be virtually impossible, I would assume, because, I've played games before. I have read books before, and this is about those two things, and I don't understand what's going on.
Yeah.
So, you failed at the task of translating.
And it's not like the ideas are incompatible. We've seen books about...
Playing games, yes. No, it's not like a new thing to do.
No.
And I also think that, when you're looking at the whole stat page thing, that could be interesting. Like, oh, you bring up all these normal stats, and, it's casual thing, and then you bring up stats, and it's like, oh, wow, look at these stats. And it could be intimidating in a way that you can get information about a character before you fight them. Traditionally, in a traditional sort of fight, you would have no idea how good someone is just only based on some sort of visual or, what people say about that person. But you could have a play with those. There are some unique functions of a game where information is readily available. But if you're going up to a boss and you look up the attributes page, and all of a sudden it says it's 5 stars attack, you think, well...
what the fuck does that mean?
Yeah, what the fuck does that mean? I did want to say, the book ends, just going to read the last little bit. Li Chen has reached level 34 at the end of the book. The max level is 40.
Okay, so he's not even in, like, the end game.
No, he's not the end game. And I love because it says, in just a few minutes, Li Chen's experience has risen 32% and 50%. What? It seemed that catching up, not a fish, remember him from the top of the leaderboards?
Oh, yeah.
In levels today was no longer a problem. Thinking of this, Li Chen was joyful. He immediately returned to the wetland, there's some area in the game, to continue searching for black scale pythons and collectible snake skins. Happiness can cover up exhaustion unconsciously. It's late at night, but Li Chen still grinded energetically. He did not only harvest dozens of black scale python, but also submitted the snake skins for 11 times. Until the magic potion in his package was used up, Li Chen realized that it was time to go offline. Viewing the character panel, Li Chen has reached level 34, and his experience was also 89%. He successfully topped the list of Linyan City, and soon he will be able to break through level 35, a step closer to the level 40 second job. The durability of the equipment also lost a lot in the long battle, and there's nothing to do if he stayed longer now. So, Li Chen went straight back to the city and took a look at the time. It was already 2 o'clock in the morning. He suddenly felt sleepy and immediately went offline. The end. I've got some questions. You just said that it was 32%, then 50%, and then right in the next paragraph you say 89%. 32 plus 50 does not equal 89. Am I adding those numbers together? What does the percentage mean? What? It's not his level. I mean...
Now, is there any sort of climactic event that takes place before this?
Well...
Because, I mean, that's not an end to a story. I mean, that's like your falling action. You know, like after they've beaten the boss of this dungeon, he just goes back to the grind and, he needs to log out and sleep now, and it's back to another day.
No, literally, you know the black scale python that he was collecting?
Yeah, very, very intimate with the knowledge of...
Yeah, the canon in this, I know all the different monsters. That is the elite monster that he fights.
Just a fucking, like, mob, like a python.
Yeah, it tells me that for this level 30 ordinary monster, it could be solved. This is, again, at the top of chapter 50, the final chapter, that, these elite monsters could be... It gives you a fucking goddamn stat description. Black scale python, elite monsters, in bracket, level 35, attack 275 to 343, defense 110, life 5,000, skills poison slash, quenched teeth. Introduction, and then boom, huge introduction.
You know what's fascinating to me is that sort of thing makes sense. The stat page makes sense as in, like, yeah, a Python enemy in a game has these stats and it has a poison slash attack.
Yeah.
Why doesn't anything that surrounds this game or the story or the characters make any sense from, like, a prose level, but the fucking random stat pages make sense even as, like, if you translated a Chinese MMO into a Western one? Why is that the only thing that comes through clean?
I have no idea why things come through cleaner if they're done like that. But it's funny because the little introduction bits about the enemies and about the characters and things like that, they make a lot more sense than anything else in the book. For example, the introduction to the snakes, the unique snakes in Voldemort wetlands, they don't like to live in groups and are extremely toxic. Countless people in Linyan City have died under their fangs. That makes sense.
That's a real sentence, yeah.
That's a real, yeah. I'm like, okay.
That's a real sentence with context to something else in the story, which is like the town, which has a leaderboard and people who wrestle for the highest spot.
Yeah. He just fights snakes in the last chapter.
That's it. There's no big boss, no dungeon master, no... You know, you could talk about Ender's Game, like the little game that they're playing translates to events in the real world.
Yeah, no. There's
no climactic battle. There's no connection between those spaceships and the game.
Every chapter, he just fights different level mobs.
Fuck.
And you can go back. And it's funny because each chapter seems to be the same. He checks the leaderboard in one chapter. The next chapter, he fights the next level monster, and then you get a stat page. You get him sometimes talking to his friends or people around him, and he just gets to the top of the leaderboard by the end of the book. Unless something crazy and really pertinent happens in the middle chapters, which I really just skipped over. I read from about chapter 40 to 50 in the first 3 chapters. But I mean, I scroll down and all I just see is the stat pages and then the attack damages and then just more nonsense garbage things. And I can just assume that he's playing the game and just fighting mobs, So you can flip to any page and it says the level 30 tank type monster is not very difficult. Okay. So, I don't know. It doesn't deserve to be put on a stat page like the book likes to put everything else in.
I'm going to have to check my stat page after this and see wit -20.
Yeah. And then I'm wondering, where was the translation error in the story? Where was the translation error in the actual story subject? There's this strange beginning with the spaceships. If you're looking in really broad terms, he begins playing this game after this lady, comes in and just blows up his bedroom and shows it to him. And then he plays it and, basically just gets to the top of the leaderboard.
Not even to the final level or
No, he doesn't even finish playing the game within the book. He just gets to the top of the leaderboard and sort of gets near the finish, And it's not as if the finish, it really does sound just like a grinding MMO.
Yeah. Well, I mean, you said to the second job. That sounds a bit like a Final Fantasy term where you have your class basically is your job. And sometimes in those games you unlock a second job or a second class so that you spread your skills or whatever. It sounds a bit like that might be 40 isn't even the end of this game. He's just like a low-level scrub.
Yeah, well...
Who is at the top of the leaderboard only in one town.
Yeah, I
have so many questions.
I want to say that there's more. And if you want to buy it, mate, you're out of luck for now. Maybe it'll come back, but...
So you have a copy of this book that can't be attained, then?
Yes. I didn't realize that it was going to be taken off. I was going to say it's going to be pretty rich if they keep this up there. And I was really interested to see how many people would buy it and what people would say about it. But not only is it gone, Zenith Novels' Amazon page is gone. So they must have got really kicked out.
Well, then lucky for any of those of you who are listening, we have preserved this magnificent work.
Yes.
For all of you to enjoy.
One day I hope that I can get the rights to this and put it up on Amazon or something like that again. And if you have any people you hate and want to really torture, you can tie them up and read it aloud to them. And I hope that there is a chance you get to take a peek at this or something like it.
We should write to Zenith Novels and request that they...
get the paperback version.
Yeah, that would be great. It does say we can support them on Patreon. Perhaps we have... Perhaps we can reach them there. They've got 3 patrons, make about $10 a month.
Really?
Yeah.
They're making dough.
Yeah, it says the number of novels, we are doing is increasing every day. The number of translators joining us increasing. Thus, number of readers are also increasing every day. If you're a regular visitor, you must have noticed that recently we had been forced to move to a bigger server. This has really increased the running cost of the site. They ask for money. They want to keep their site ad-free.
Honorable. I don't know what that would advertise. Translation. So, yeah. That was Sword Immortal Online.
A fascinating tale. Thank you for sharing.
So what did you think about that?
I am, as you probably predicted, I'm baffled.
Shocked and appalled.
Yes, I'm baffled that such a thing
exists.
Exists. It's not so much that the text exists. My confusion comes, how does something like this make it to market and get charged for $7?
Yeah.
It frustrates me and it angers me.
It frustrates me and it angers me and it makes me think that, oh my god, I could put up any writing and sell it.
Yeah, it doesn't even have to make sense. I mean, China Strike is being sold for $1 and that book is fucking awesome.
Yeah.
It's hilarious. You get something out of that dollar.
I would say that This nonsense book has given me... It's like when you see something shocking on the internet, like someone's head getting cut off, and you can't believe that humanity, like, is like this, and that stuff like that exists, and it sort of makes you feel like, what does the world come to? That I also get that experience from goddamn Sword Immortal. You know, why does this exist, and why am I alive? A lot of it's not funny. Like, it's not funny to know that it exists.
Yeah. Well, that was Sword Immortal Online.
Yes.
So, next time we will be talking about a book called Jaunts of the Mantis, which we spent some time looking for new titles to review on the show, and a catchy title is always the first thing that gets our attention.
Oh, yeah.
And this one spoke to me. This is a science fiction adventure novel about a retired military man in some sort of space republic being given a scout ship so that he can explore the galaxy. However, there just seems to be a lot of weird shit going on in it.
Yes. No, I think really the best way to say it is that we have a certain criteria when we look for books, and this one ticked all the boxes. It really did.
Yeah.
It's got a hilarious title. It has instantly sexist vibes because there is a
sex robot of sorts, but they clarify she's not a sex robot, but she does perform sexual acts for the crew. And it goes into excruciating detail with how lovely she is.
I mean, you just couldn't have a good sci-fi story without a sexy companion robot.
For the author and for the readers to objectify.
Yes, no, you just couldn't do it. And also it has grammatical errors galore and cheesy dialogue. So hopefully it's going to be...
our favorite.
Oh, yes. Thank you, everyone, for listening and supporting the show. And please, if you can, support us on Patreon, and doubly so, share our podcast with your friends. It's a huge help, and thank you to all of those who already do that. If you have a book you want us to look at, share it with us on one of our platforms, and we'll consider it for the show. Thanks.